everybody, and welcome to PublisHer Unmasked, which is a series of virtual conversations with inspiring and influential book women from around the world. My name is Hannah Johnson. I'm the publisher of international book trade magazine, Publishing Perspectives, and I'm very excited to be talking today with Latoya West-Blackwood. She's the chairman, or I guess we should say chairwoman, of the Book Industry Association in Jamaica, and also the founder of I Publish Consultancy and Imagination Books. Before we get into the interview, I just want to say a couple words about PublisHer. It is a fantastic worldwide community of female publishing leaders who are working together, supporting each other, and tackling the industry's entrenched gender imbalance, which is even today still pronounced at the executive level in particular. And it's a fantastic organization, very supportive. And this video series is called Unmasked. It's a series highlighting women around the world, one region at a time, who are doing great work for their communities and for the book industry. So it's my pleasure to be interviewing ladies from North America and the Caribbean. And on that note, let's get into the interview. So Latoya, thank you and welcome.
Thank you for having me. And I'm happy to be a part of this series and happy that such a platform exists for all the reasons you just outlined, and no better time than now to get going.
Yeah, definitely. It's good to have a support group. And I think these days we all need some support and some, some positive feedback. I think the best place to start is probably if you could just give us a quick overview of your publishing career path and what led you to get started with your own consultancy and your own publishing house.
Well, I didn't realize it then, but my path to becoming a publisher started at age 5. If you'd ask me. And it was, the beginning in terms of falling in love with books. Mm-hmm. And coming from a very humble background where, I didn't grow up, being very well traveled at a young age, that opportunity came much later in life. And so for me, books were my windows to the world, my passport, my very first passport or visa, to cross the borders and to explore different cultures and people, meet different people through my imagination. And I say that my journey began there because that's what I really pin my purpose to in terms of my work, trying to create hope and unlock the imagination of children and young people to just understand that there is more than meets the eye in terms of what's possible. And of course, the conscious beginning would have come much later in life. I've been in the industry for more than a decade now. And since then, I've had the opportunity I've worked in publishing full-time. My career started out at well-known Caribbean publishing house, Ian Randa Publishers. They specialize in tertiary level publications, and they have also branched off into trade. But it was really one of the first Caribbean publishing imprints that really took our voices to the world. Mm-hmm. And so there I got a really good view as to what was possible through publishing in terms of giving voice and visibility and a platform. And fast forward to what I started on my own, it really came out of a need to realize that there were more diverse voices and that we needed to reimagine how we do what we do and why we do it. And to just be more inclusive in terms of who gets access, because, coming from a market like mine that is textbook dominated and, so on, even though we have produced some of the best writers in the world, from a business standpoint, it's just been safer for people to focus on textbooks, and also that we're still building out an ecosystem to support the business side of publishing in our region. And so, I just started my journey because of that, because I wanted to be a part of just giving people more access, being more inclusive, and also doing a lot of work that would just really have a lot of inspirational value.
Mm-hmm. And when you talk about being inclusive, I assume that means not just gender or race, but also economic inclusivity and making sure
Every
that all
Yes,
walks of people get a
yeah.
chance.
Yes, inclusivity is just that for me. It's not in a box in terms of, you have certain things that you tick off as inclusive. So clearly, I'm a Black woman, so people could say, okay, that's your agenda. Of course, it's a part of my agenda. Giving space for more Black women, stories to be told, and for them to be the center of stories. But inclusivity includes everything for me: sexuality, race, gender, class, everything. I believe that we should all have a seat at the table. And, that's what inclusivity means for me.
Yeah, well, here, I agree with you. I think, having more voices at the table makes it brings everybody up. I wonder if you could talk also a little bit about this push from markets like the US and the UK to make publishing more diverse, more inclusive. Um, what's your opinion on the effectiveness of that? Do you think it's working? Is it a good thing? Should they be doing things differently? What do you think?
So I think that diversity is having diverse voices at the table is very important. And I think that any move towards that is a good one. I think what we need to be mindful of always, though, is that there's always a need to revisit what inclusivity looks like. So, inclusivity 5 years ago or 10 years ago might have looked very different. But where are we today and what's needed today? Who have we still not covered in terms of emerging areas of focus? So there's always a need to revisit. And then from the Caribbean perspective, I would say that I still, as a part of the industry, sometimes some of these discussions about inclusivity and diversity in other spaces, it seems like I'm watching it from afar, literally, not just in terms of the geographic distance, but literally how we are collaborating. So I think that that can be deepened in terms of, you know, sometimes, again, just referring to a core part of my identity as a Black woman, sometimes when there are certain influential positions filled in the global publishing community, it almost feels like a familiar place in a face in a high place, but
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't necessarily trickle down in terms of the impact outside of that specific space. What do I mean by that? I mean that, it might be, so having somebody become the first in the UK or North America or wherever, it might satisfy the need of that home territory. But what about the global community? How does that breaking that barrier trickle down into change elsewhere or create opportunities elsewhere outside of that space? So I think we can be a lot more deliberate about that, about seeking out new talent, sharing resources, opportunities outside of some of these bigger, more powerful spaces, and provide access, for in a really global way.
I mean, one thing that occurs to me when you say this also is, there's a lot of authors from smaller markets like Jamaica that get kind of sucked into these bigger markets. I'm sure publishers from the US are publishing a lot of Jamaican authors, and they're not necessarily being published at home.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, that it would be nice for them to be part of the Jamaican publishing ecosystem, but I wonder, do you think these big markets have an obligation to give more recognition to these international voices? And is there a different way to do it than just publishing them themselves?
Yes. So I think you might have some mind reading capabilities. You're touching on a pain point for me personally as a reader,
Mm-hmm.
first of all, and also as a publisher, as a member of the industry. And we've had some really huge successes in terms of our writers who have gone into bigger markets, and that's, I mean, it's beneficial for us as a country, as a creative community, to get that kind of exposure. But in instances, for example, where you have an author that becomes a huge success in the North American, UK, European market, and then at home you have to wait several months to be able to access their book. And remember, the market is split, so we're not all sitting around with Kindles waiting for a book to drop or any other electronic device. Some of us are still reading print, as the data will show.
Yeah.
So it's not the end of the print book or anything. So in terms of servicing our markets, even in a basic way, like having books available, counting us as a part of the market when you're building up for release, and all the excitement in terms of publicity and promotion, count us among that number, even though we might be small. In Jamaica's case, we're very small, in terms of just being around 2.7 million people living here physically, but we have a huge diaspora, and we want to be counted in terms of, keeping that connection. Yes, we understand. Our ideal is that we would love to see more authors being able to stay at home and become successful, because from the business side, that will mean success beyond the author. It will mean that the same kind of success that happens in the markets that they live and work, where an agent becomes successful, or a small publishing imprint, as we have seen a lot of independent presses, put out award-winning titles, right? We want to see that same kind of success. But as a bridge until we get there, on a basic level, just including us in terms of the publicity, the marketing, and availability is critical. That's a basic thing I would love to see happen.
I love that message too, that these pushes towards diversity and inclusivity aren't just about a publishing house's staff or even the authors they publish, which of course is an important component, but also about, making sure that the entire potential readership has access, and supporting the community where their authors come from. I think that maybe is something that still needs to happen.
And I mean, even one of the other means of collaboration, I think at an industry level, through the BIAG, I would love to see more, collaboration and investment in terms of even training opportunities. Some of the skill sets that support the success of an author or a publishing imprint or whatever in the ecosystem, in terms of just being exposed to the current trends, retooling in terms of the different, things that go into the process, that can even help to build out the capacity of the industry in spaces where authors come from. And so that when you're having a book, you won't have to run to some language specialist somewhere else. You could literally, in the case of a Jamaican author, which I'm happy to see the number of, so like Marlon James, Nicole Dennis Ben, who have not shied away from using our dialect, from using patois in their books. And it hasn't stopped readers from accessing it and enjoying it. But, even those capabilities or skills to say, an editor who is familiar with the culture, could also be a part of that process, homegrown talent. Those are just some of the things that we'd love to see happen. And I think some of the authors, like the ones I mentioned, are playing their role in the advocacy as well, trying to have people included. So for Nicole, she would have used Jamaican to do the voicing of her audiobook, cool. Right? Which made it, very authentic. So I think everybody has a role to play. It's just for us to continue to build on what's there, but to have some urgency to it.
Yeah. Can you give us a sense of what the Jamaican book industry is like? I mean, you mentioned a few things like the ecosystem is still kind of being built up, but I would imagine there's some really great publishing
Yes.
houses doing some cool things. Could you tell
Yes.
us a little bit about that?
So I am proud of where we are. We've had, in terms of being a nation, we're just over 50 odd years old, getting our independence in 1962. So we come from a very our history is very rich in terms of, you know, what we've been through and how, as a relatively young nation, in terms of being able to make our own decisions and chart our own path, we've come a long way. We've produced world-class writers, talent across the spectrum of the creative industries, and we have a lot to be proud for. But where we're at now is looking at how can we move beyond these spotlights, these stars that come around, you know, at these intervals, to developing a model that will support excellence on a continuous basis and not necessarily depend on any external goodwill by itself, although we welcome that, to create this success. And so I think that starting from the standpoint of gender, I think that we're in a much better position, I would say, in comparison to maybe what the global outlook is like. The founding chairman of the BIAJ is actually Shirley Carby, who is a well-known publishing figure, not just in Jamaica, but in the international circles. And so when we joined the International Publishers Association 2 years ago, you know, we would have had people referencing her work and her legacy in terms of building up our industry to the point that it is at now. So we still have work to do. It's not that just because we have these women, these phenomenal women in leadership, it means that everything is perfect, right? At the lower levels, we still need to see more women being in a position of ownership. So not just doing all the hard work behind the scenes, but not really having a stake. So we still have work to do there. And even in terms of their representation in the work, beyond the service level, but really centering their stories, we have work to do there. I would say that as well, we are now seeing younger publishers kind of charting a new path in terms of what is covered. So I can mention Blue Banyan Books, whose founder is Tanya Batson Savage. She has been doing a lot of work in the area of children's books and young adults, just looking at the matter of representation and putting forward more work that is, you know, putting that agenda on the table. And we have several more. We have even a platform called Book Fusion that is doing a lot in terms of providing access to modern tools and technologies, digital tools, digital transformation of the industry, where ebooks and other types of digital transformation are concerned. So there's a lot of progress being made. I would say that some of the things that are on our radar right now include keeping that inclusivity agenda going, because we know that as an industry, we have not touched every area, we have not included everyone. We're continuing to push for that. So with our last Kingston Book Festival, for example, you know, we would have tried to ensure that we touched as many areas of inclusivity as possible. And one such area of focus was looking at people living with disabilities. We have a lot of work to do there, but through the support of the British Council, we were able to have Raymond Antrobus, who is a Jamaican British deaf poet. He was one of our headliners. and did a lot of work with the local community, local deaf community, around literature and just, bringing to light the issues of that community. And we want to continue on that path. We also want to deepen relationships with the international community as it relates to providing or creating new audiences for the works of our writers and publishers or other members of our industry, creating linkages, partnerships, looking at the area of rights and translations, all those exciting, opportunities. So yeah, that's just some
Gosh.
of what we want to do.
It sounds like you have ambitious plans. Your days are probably really busy, full of all these things.
Yeah, well, it's just I'm a voice, but I can tell you that there are a lot of people just trying. I mean, we might have lofty goals, but each step adds up.
Yeah.
And so there are people doing the work at different levels. So I'm happy to just be a voice for that and, try to create a platform or opportunities, be a connector of sorts.
Yeah.
For people to opportunities.
Well, and that's part of what you do at your consultancy, isn't that right? I mean, in addition, you
Yes.
publish books, but part of what you do is to help people connect with each other.
As a matter of fact, I've found that I've become less active on the traditional publishing agenda, and just by some of the opportunities I've been given, I actually am playing more of that connector role. So I've had the blessing of making contact with people in the international publishing community that have, I guess my passion has impacted them. And so they're like, how can I help you? Which
Cool.
is always the reaction I'm looking for.
Yeah, it's nice when people come to you.
Yeah. So, for example, just recently I was invited to join the board of PublisHer. And that's a major opportunity that I'm looking forward to in terms of just the contacts just on the board itself, just being able to work with and learn from and share with all these amazing women and their communities in terms of their countries that they're from, learning more about the publishing community from their perspective. Through the IPA, just the how active they are and the issues that they have been highlighting, following publications like yours. So yeah, I'm grateful for all of those.
So if anyone wants to know anything about Jamaican publishing or authors, you're the person to see.
I would be happy to help with that.
Well, I think this is a really good place to end for now. I hope this isn't the last time that we speak with each other. I hope we get to do this again in the future. But I think your passion for what you're doing is very clear, and it is infectious, and it makes everybody, at least me, want to go out and do something really impactful today. So
yeah, I'm happy for the platform once again, and just in terms of the way forward. So we're currently in the middle of a pandemic. Clearly, nobody wants that, but that's our reality.
yeah.
Our industry locally has faced some significant challenges because that publishing, especially in spaces like ours, from the capital investment side, from taking a chance on somebody who is unknown, it involves a lot of risk. And so at a time like this, when even low risk things are, you have to think about them twice, thrice, it's a lot. But I am optimistic in terms of a route to recovery. And I think that path will definitely involve more collaboration, like levels that we have not even tried before, sharing resources again, and just remaining connected, not losing hope, and using this time to really position books because it's important for children. The book industry in Jamaica has been working with different organizations to just keep children hopeful and inspired at this time through books. And at a basic level, that's something that we can do.
Yeah. super important message. Let's all stay optimistic and hopeful, and yeah, see if we can get through this together.
We will.
Yeah, we will. Well, Latoya, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for sharing your experience and your insight. And I hope that you have a lot more people reaching out to you, wanting to work with you and collaborate and make sure that everybody gets a seat at the table. I think that's really important.
Yes, I'm looking forward, and thank you for allowing me this interview.
Yeah, thank you so much.